Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb, geopolitical strategist at former Black Hawk helicopter pilot and battalion commander for the U.S. Army. So good to have you here, Colonel. So President Trump saying Saturday that the Iranian leader could not avoid, quote, U.S. intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems. There was not a thing he or the other leaders that have been killed along with him could do. So talk to us about U.S. air power and military intelligence in this war. What is Iran up against?
Iran is up against something that they've never really truly experienced before, which is being massively overmatched by a much superior military force in the United States and in Israel. And by the way, these two reflect to an extent some of the capabilities that reside within NATO in general also. So what matters about all of that is when you start talking about the ability of the United States, along with some of our allies, to build an intelligence picture of a country like Iran. And by the way, that intelligence picture has been built for a very long time. I've worked on stuff in this country quite a long time ago as well, not physically in it, but as far as like operational plans and such. We've mapped the entire country for a very long time. And that goes everything from space-based assets to unmanned assets to other things that are out there and sources on the ground that tell us where things are that Iran probably has no idea that we were already aware of. And the bombing campaign, as it's been developing, makes it very clear that they were trying to hide things in numerous distributed locations they probably didn't think we knew about, but they were high on the list and easily and quickly removed at the beginning of this conflict. So when you marry intelligence, accurate intelligence, to operations and a airborne fleet like we are capable of putting together over top of Iran in working with our allies, this is why you see us achieving air dominance over a 90 million person country in the space of about 36 hours.
You said the U.S. has mapped out the country for a very long time. This is incredible to hear. But Colonel, let me get your comments on something else. So a guest that we often have on the show said F-22 and F-35 stealth fighters, along with 2 aircraft carriers and more land-based fighters, are leading the most sophisticated air campaign ever launched by U.S. forces. And she also said the #1 metric for success is the destruction of Iran's military power. Do you also see it this way?
Absolutely, and I would add in the Aegis destroyer systems in the that are with those aircraft carrier battle groups. This is the true test of billions of American dollars and hours of technology, experimentation, and many other things, and proving the case that much of it has been well spent for the sake of our military and its dominance on the battlefield. That those statements that you mentioned, I believe, are 100% true and will continue to be proven out over time, because those are just the things that are publicly available, publicly visible. And there are many other assets that are not necessarily so much like that. But all of this coming together so well choreographed is why we're sitting here watching a conflict in Iran and going and should be amazed at how successful we have been as a whole.
Yeah, I am amazed. So, Colonel, there's one question that perhaps is looming over this, a rather important question. It's whether troops will be on the ground in Iran. So based on the goals laid out by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, do you think there will be a need for U.S. troops in Iran?
I don't think so, and I don't think the American people would support that either. We've tried that before in nations like Afghanistan and Iraq, and we know that nation building is not something we need to or should get involved in. That doesn't mean that we don't have ways to help the Iranian people build their own nation and make sure that they own their country and the solutions that can make it what it is capable of being, peaceful and prosperous, whether that be some form of democracy or a government that works for them, but at least isn't a belligerent and spreading terrorism everywhere. That's critical. And how that plays out right now will be determined by the response of the IRGC and the Quds Force, and whether they can coalesce together and actually fight back against their population should they be able to do so. And the population then becomes much more challenged in trying to take their country back. But We can't solve this with boots on the ground in Iran. That would gain us absolutely nothing.
Okay, so you said earlier this is something Iran has never faced before. How long do you think Iran can sustain this war, militarily speaking? Trump says the operation could take around 4 weeks.
Well, I would give that a graded scale. So how long can they sustain this in an effective manner that actually threatens their neighboring states and has a chance of actually achieving some minor level of victory in here? I would say you're going to know the answer to that within the next 7 to 10 days. And that's when the bombing campaign will have changed already, more than likely, or could be very soon to, which is we strike targets as they reveal themselves rather than hit a pre-planned list of targets that we've known about for years. And that'll be the difference. I think what you're going to see is 4 to 6 weeks from now, you're going to have a really solid answer of what the military campaign looks like, and you can consider it a military victory. The question then becomes, can we win the peace, which in many cases is a much harder thing to do, because now you're dealing with who do you put in Iran and how do you establish a semblance of governance that works for the people there and keeps them from reverting back to where they came from in the first place. That'll be the greatest challenge of all after a military victory is achieved, which I assume at this point is more than likely.
Okay, I want to follow up on one thing you said just now, that Iran has attacked surrounding areas. So how effective have U.S. bases' defense systems been against Iranian missiles and attacks?
Highly effective, and that is a wonderful thing. And that, by the way, that also includes those systems based in other countries like Jordan. We've had allies that are helping with this, and then you add in those carrier strike groups with the Aegis destroyers and all the defensive systems those ships come with. You've got a very layered defense system across where they are, and of course, what Israel has proven to be effective for a very long time, and what's new and really demonstrating its value is now the Iron Beam laser system that's knocking missiles out of the sky up in northern Israel that Hezbollah is launching. So our ships, our bases, and the systems that we have are highly effective. Nothing is perfect, but if they hadn't been effective, this could have gone a lot worse for the Gulf nations and American bases.
Okay, that's good to hear. Colonel, just one final question here. Is there a wild card or that you're watching right now, if any, in this situation?
I would say 2 wild cards, and the first one I think is a long shot and very unlikely, and that is if somehow Iran was able to develop nuclear capacity without our knowledge. I give that an extremely low percentage, but you have to account for things like that just in case. Second one would be the wild card being, what do the Iranian people do? You have to have momentum when it comes to civilian uprisings against dictators who have a significant sized army and about a 10,000 person core group that works against them. So the first one, be aware of. I wouldn't worry about it. I think it's low chances. The second one, we're all going to be watching that, because that's going to be how the tide could really turn and show what Iran can be.
All right, Colonel, it's really good to hear your analysis today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.
Insurance companies are canceling war risk coverage for vessels in the Gulf as the widening Iran conflict disrupted shipping, leaving at least 4 tankers dead.